Today's training is called Animation in User Interface, and I believe it will be interesting for any developer and designer who builds sites and applications. And we will be discussing concepts that I think you all can understand. Okay, thank you. However, please stop me and ask questions if you feel a bit lost. I did spend a couple of months in research and practice, but still very new to this topic. So if I have an answer on your question, I will answer. If not, I will explore more after the training and will write to you back. So let's begin. Everything has started when I decided to add some animation effects for my site, and I was searching for simple rules and guides that what exactly I should do and how. But most of the articles explain how to add very fancy, funky animation, like how to make a catwalk or how to make a ball roll. That was great, but I didn't want to create a cartoon. My goal was to make an iteration with the site smoother and to make user flow more natural without any frictions. What exactly I mean, I want to show you the video because sometimes it's better one time to see than hundreds time to hear. So let's watch it together and then discuss it. And I'm not sure how it like will you see it okay or maybe with some delay. Yesterday we tested with Asi and it worked great, but if you will watch this video and you feel that there is some delay, please say me. All right. Okay, so let's discuss it a bit. Did you like it? How does it feel for you, like such kind of interface? Asa, maybe you can start.
As for me, it looks very alive, very. I mean, I see that interface reacts on some user actions.
Yes.
So all the actions, they look much more smooth, I think. And I like as user, I see that something happened.
Something happened, right? So you read and text expand, like you hover and some icons react on your action. Yeah, it like feels very natural, like with real object. So what do you think? Like, was it easy to create or not? Such interface.
For sure not.
For sure not.
Yes.
Yes.
It couldn't be easy because I see here a lot of front-end work, of course. But from other side, I see that designers and UI UX experts worked on it because, again, in my opinion, we just can't decide, okay, let's shake the image on hover. It doesn't work like this.
Exactly.
Because everything was done with some purpose. Right. To be more clear for user, but not to confuse.
Right. Cool. Thank you, Asa. So yes, This is the link, and you can read later. And that is the article where George Krasnikov, this is the author of this user interface, he explains step by step the process of the redesign. So definitely check it out. Like there is a research was done. There was like they trying to analyze what exactly user will try to do here and there, and it took, of course, a lot of resources, but the result definitely worth it. But even if we don't have time to lift it up to such a high level, we still can achieve good result knowing basic animation principles. It's like with typography. If you know the main rules, like make a contrast between font and background and use big enough line height, so in this case you are good to go to make a readable site. Today we will learn main principles in animation. Oh, this is the example. Sorry, I forgot to show example. Like one of how they created this interface. You can see like a lot of drafts and experiments and brain resources. Yes, and we start from looking to movies because who knows more about good animation as movie makers? We will learn from them. Let me remind you how the animation was invented. In 1962, photographer Edward Maybridge wanted to find out whether the horse raises all four legs during the run. And he took pictures when a horse with a rider ran past. And by the way, you see that of a couple of them, the horse has all legs in the air. And later, Maybridge placed all the photos in the device that could project them very quickly, and it creates an illusion of a running horse, like this. And this device was later called a film projector. Yes, it's good to keep in mind when you create an animation like movie, cartoon, game, or appearance of model window on site, it's always a sequence of frames. You may heard about the term jump cut. It came also from movie. This is a technique when some frames are missed, but you still understand what happens. Like on this photo, you see a baseball player throws a ball. You don't see each and every his movement, but you understand what happens. You see on the first frame, man stands on one leg, and on the second on two legs, but you don't ask yourself, oh my god, what just happened, right? Because you understand it without too much of details. Another example that we often see in movie is the jump cut with a zoom. So looking on these two pictures, you see that it's still the same room, same people, but on the second photo, a lecturer stands a bit closer to us. But it's okay, you understand the context. Okay, another good example of jump cut is like two people look at pizza and what they're doing in the next frame, so they start eating it, right? Your brain is like telling you the story and you don't put too much effort to understand it. But what about this? Like, what happens here? How these two pictures are connected? And you may be a bit confused, like your brain just trying to find this connection. But if we add the missing piece like this, it's now much more understandable. So you understand there is a child and there is a mother and they are walking in their garden. What we can learn here is two important things. So firstly, if you understand the context, you don't need too much of the details to connect two states. However, you spend brain resources to do it. Well, you know that our brain is pretty small comparing to our body, like maybe only 3% of our body is the weight of our brain, but it spends about 25% of all our energy. And that is why our body will be really appreciate if we don't waste our resources. That is the reason why animation is much easier to process than jump cuts. Let's see now how these concepts can be applied in user interface. On the screen from the left, the first block, it expands instantly. So let's see it. It's like boom, and it's open, right? If you initiated this action, or if you have experience to use such interface, it can work for you. Otherwise, you can be a bit lost for some time trying to understand what was changed. On the right screen, you see that block, it expands smoothly. You understand it changes its height. Maybe you will see more text, but you don't lose a context of it. Another example with the tabulator, compare like instance changes from the left to scrolling from the right. So animation in this case, it gives you an idea that you are still on the same page. You can scroll up, you can scroll down if it's needed. So there is no jump cuts on the right screen. Next, we will watch some real examples. So let's watch and try to discuss it later. So the first one, let's watch it one more time. So what happens? We see the list of emails, then we click on it, and right after we click, we see completely another page with the like detailed email. So let's see. Click, and we see another page. So compared to this one, I will show you one more time. So when user clicks on this item itself expands and information appears. So we click, it expands and information appears. And you may think, oh, it's like slightly different, but we are here to start seeing this difference. And keep in mind that you all are experienced users, like I think with at least 10 years of practice in web surfing. But imagine a child or an elder man who sees sites the first time, and if they are your visitors, you need to make sure that your application is understandable for them. By the way, you may know that very big companies, they have ability to test their user interface with real people, right? Like before they go into production. And what do you think, like what is the indicator of the bad user interface? Like what user may say about user interface if it's bad? Like any ideas?
They won't have conversions. Like, let's say if it's an e-commerce site in the UI that doesn't appeal them, or is it if it's too crappy, they won't end up purchasing the product.
Yeah, but maybe I didn't like question it the right way. What I meant is that, let's say people try to use your user interface, right? They try to interact with it, and at some point they may say like, what just happened? So if you hear this question like, what just happened, something definitely is wrong with this interface, and you have to avoid this question. All right, so I hope that for this moment you are like convinced that animation can make user experience easier. So the next question is when to add animation. As with everything, good from bad separates only the measure. So that is why it's good like to have some criteria, some very specific criteria. So case number one is the response on user's action. What user can do on site? Can you name it, like what action he can do on site? Someone?
Oh, so user can click, scroll, I don't know, I don't know, drag and drop, I don't know, move something. Yeah, a lot of things.
Right, cool. Thank you, Yura. So yes, like hover, click, focus, scroll. all events that basically we know from JavaScript, right? And I prepared a couple of examples, so let's watch them and analyze together. So here's the first one. So you can see, like, if I hover or maybe slice, right, interface, it gives me an idea that I am noticed, right? That I do something, interface knows about it. So another example. Also with hover, so come on. You can see, like, I hover to this icon and it has some animation, so I understand that I can do something with it. So this is just a classic example, right? When you want to mute, you click on the button and it changes, right? So it like reaction on your action. And if you want to unmute, you again click and it has the opposite effect. So very classic example, but with this, your user will understand what is going on, right? That your interface reacts on user actions. And yes, drag and drop. I actually cannot imagine drag and drop without animation. Like, how can user understand where he can put some of the item, right? So there is just really, I have no idea how we can do drag and drop without animation. All right, so case number 2 is transition from one state to another. Let's again look at the examples. Let's watch it one more time. There is the icon, right? And first, when I click on it, there is some like hover effect. Again, just to show that you clicked on this icon. And then directly from this icon, we see that model windows appears. It doesn't appear from somewhere. It appears directly from the icon. So let's watch it one more time. And again, we close it. So this is like transition of some state, right? From open to close. What we have next? Oh, this is also very cool. So when we click to add some event, right, to our calendar, the forms for adding it is created directly from the button. Again, there is no like jump cuts that we click on something and then we see the form. You see this transition from one state to another. Let's watch it one more time. It's really cool. I hope you like it also. Okay, next is with menu, right? So you pull and you first see the list of users, then again you pull and you can start the chat with the user. So it's like you understand from where you come and how everything is connected. One more example with the menu. Oh, that one is really crucial. When you work with users' data, it's very important to give a feedback what is going on. Like in this case, let's say we are loading some file, right? So you give some idea that it's like 50% loaded, 100% loaded, right? And then like, okay, success, it's loaded. So for user, it's just crucial to understand what is going on with their data. And like in general, have you noticed that it's much easier to wait when you know how much time it takes, right? That is why I personally really like the traffic light with timers. So I know that green light will be in 5 seconds. So I'm just waiting calmly. And I think the same we should do for our users. Next case, when to add animation, is when we want to draw attention. So when do you think we should draw user attention on site? In what cases? Any ideas?
Can you repeat your question?
Yes, like when do you think we should draw user attention?
When we want to subscribe to our site,
Or maybe when there is a payment transaction or something like this.
Y- Yes, maybe so. It's like basically common cases like alerts or some new notifications, or maybe we have some banner and we want user to notice this banner, right? And the main two tools to make something noticeable is change the color and make it move. So that is why, if you remember some very bad like looking site with banners, they are always like shaking a bit and they changing something, like maybe some sentence or pictures it changing. So this is the best way how you can draw attention. So in this example, you see that some user did something, right? And after this, the system shows the alert, and this is the way to draw attention. Like, come on, like your action was successful, so everything is all right. Again, another thing, like when we try to delete something and we like it was successful or it was not, right? We should give the user a feedback, and this feedback, it should be noticeable. Oh, this is very interesting example. So you can see that there is a button, we click, there is a progress, right? And then the status of the action, we can see it on the button itself. That like it has some animation, right? And that is what helps us to show all the states. Yeah, one more classic example when like maybe user do something on site and then new message comes, right? And what we see here that color is changed. Like we have this icon with the number of new messages, and we see like this movement of the bell. So this is the way to draw users' attention. We were talking about the animation, but how do you think like animation consists from what parts? Like if we should say it very in particular, animation consists from what parts? Any ideas? Okay, so first, animation is changing the property. Like what we want to animate. Maybe it's the size, like height or width. Maybe it's the color. Maybe this is some position. Maybe this is opacity, right? So we change some property. And let's look at this link. So this is very popular CSS library that is called Animate CSS, and we will try different effects, and I want you to try to explain what is happening here. So what property we change. I will show you an example. So here is the bounce, right? Bounce effect. And what exactly we change here is we change the position of this sentence, right? A bit top, a bit down, a bit top, a bit down. That is the way to create animation. So, okay, so who wants to try next one? Come on, come on. Yashika, is it you?
yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's flash.
Visibility from like opacity from 0 to 1.
Yes, cool. Okay, who is next? Pooja, will you do it? Pooja. Okay, Asa, will you do it?
For me, it's not interesting because I know that library and all the effects.
Okay, Dina, what about you?
and how they work in styles here.
Dina, do you want to try it?
Font size changing.
Size
Font
change.
size.
Yes, cool. Or maybe like zooming, right? What about this one?
What about Jello?
Oh, I
Yeah,
couldn't hear it.
it will have position changes.
Yeah, position. All right. What else?
What is a Jello? The name
Jello.
sounds interesting.
Yeah, for me as well.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like the food Jello?
It's one of the options.
Oh,
Yeah, it's one of the options there.
Yeah,
okay. Let's try it.
Yeah.
Jello.
Yeah. There it is.
Okay, who can explain what happens here?
Something moving.
Yeah, but let's like try to analyze it as developer. Like, if we have to create this animation, what property we should change? Nadia, maybe you can help us.
Angle.
Angle? Yeah, like perspective, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Yes. So the first.
So Tanya, actually, personally, I am feeling that these are a bit overwhelming and really distracts the user a bit more. I mean, all of these, or is this a new trend coming up in the UI, or
No.
no?
So yeah, the goal is to understand how to make the animation not destructible. So as I said, like good from bad separates the measure. So yes, if everything will be shaking and bouncing on your side, no, it's not the new trend. But animation, it should be not noticeable. So it should feel natural, like you are exploring the site, and it just should feel natural. But if you see the animation itself, no, it's definitely not a good thing.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so let's come back to the presentation. Yeah, so like effects, right? We saw just a couple of them now, and I think we can separate them into categories. So first is the entry-exit effect, and the second is attention seekers. So entry-exit is like we can apply for the element that appears from nothing or disappears to nothing. Like for example, the fade effect, right? From 0 to 100 opacity and back, maybe if we want to hide this element from 100 to 0. Or with zoom, when first element is not visible, so sides width and height are 0, and then it's like with some time it becomes from 0 to 100%, and if we want to hide this element, so it works other way around. So entry exit, and the other is this attention seekers, right? So like shaking, bouncing, zooming. Again, we can maybe use again zoom and fade, but it will be not like one transition from 0 to 100, but maybe it will be like from 0 to 100, from 0 to 100, some loop. And that is the way how we can again draw user attention if we need it.
Wouldn't slide be about position rather than width?
It can be well, yes, maybe it's also about position. Yeah, I think we can say so. Thank you, Ashka. Okay, animation is movement, right? So there is three types of movement, and only three: linear, acceleration, and deceleration. Let's compare it. I think here is a video. So you can see that the red ball, it goes without acceleration, deceleration, so it goes linear, and the blue one, it goes with acceleration. Let's watch it one more time. You see the difference, right? My point is that most physical objects, they don't move linear, like mostly because of gravitation. That is why a red ball, it may look a bit robotic, and unless you don't want to make a very robotic user interface on your sites, you should either use acceleration or deceleration. So the question you may have is when to use what. And I think this is a great question. So I want to give you one hint, and I hope it will help you to understand it and to remember. So when you throw a ball, how does it move? How does it fly? With acceleration or deceleration? Like from the fast to slow or from the slow to fast? Someone? Like when you throw a ball, what happens?
It goes from fast to slow and then slow to fast. As it reaches the top, it starts to accelerate again. And when it goes from our hands, it's accelerated, and when it reaches to the top, it's slow.
Yes, so basically it's deceleration, right?
Yeah.
And when users make an action on our side, he basically throws a ball, right? It action comes from him. And that is the case when you want to use deceleration. So react on user's action as soon as possible and end it smoothly. On the other hand, when let's say user reads some article and he receives a new message. So using deceleration movement in this case, it like throwing the ball in his head. So in this case, when it was not when the action doesn't came from user, in this case you want to start slowly and take some time so user notice it and end it fast. So basically use acceleration. All these principles, they are already used on your smartphones, so you may even not notice them, as I would just answer to David's question. But yes, good animation should be not noticeable, but it should feel natural. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So, I was telling you before that there is only 3 types of movement, and this is true, but you can combine them, right? So, for example, you can start fast, then go linear, then again fast, then again slow down. And this is a graphic you can see from the left. This is cubic Bezier graphic, and there is ability to create such movement just by playing with this graphic. Let's look at the site itself. I want to show you. It's like more advanced technique and wouldn't recommend to use it. And not only me, like I was reading it on other articles that if you're very new to animation, really use acceleration or deceleration, this is it. But if you want to like experiment or create something very fancy, funny, try it. So you can see that I can move it like this and like this, like wherever I want, and see like how it works differently. So what I propose to you is just explore it later if you are interested. Okay, let's come back. Okay, here, because we already talked about all this movement, I want someone to explain like what is the type of movement we see here.
The position of the cards is changing from right 0 to right 100%.
Yes, like this is the changing of property, right? But what is the movement? Do we have here linear acceleration, deceleration? What is going on?
From slow to fast.
From slow to fast, and not only, right? Because we also have this bouncing, right, at the end.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
animation continues, so it's more difficult than just acceleration, deceleration, but in general, yeah.
It's
And you can see
combination.
like because this is some like banners, right? It can be like more fancy. So it's okay to have some shaking here, and it's look like some game application. Again, it's okay to be more fancy. So, and the last animation is speed. So if you will think about the real object, you know that the more bigger is the object, the more slower it is, the more bigger is the distance, the more time will be needed to go it, right? So for user interface, 4 sides. mostly. Starting point is 300 milliseconds. So if you have some object or distance very big, of course you should take more time. If your object or small, a distance is very small, of course you should the time should be less. So let's look at some examples again. So again, big distance, right, or small distance. Of course, you should use a different time to create this animation, but again, starting point is 300 milliseconds for web. What do we have here? Let's watch it. So yes, from the real example, right, what happened is that we click on some product, right, and we see pretty slow transition, and the text also appears pretty slow. Like, that is what I was saying, you see animation itself, right? You see animation itself, and it maybe even distract you from the content. So let's look at this example. It's just faster. It feels like boom, like you clicked on the product, you see the result. No distraction here. And this is like the more proper way to do it. Unless you want to show animation, right? Maybe for some case, for some entertainment site, you want to show this fancy animation. All right. One more thing I wanted to tell you is that it's very personal thing, time in general, how it feels. Because for experienced user in web, delay in 300 milliseconds, it can be too big. Like if you're some gamer, 300 milliseconds, you can feel it like a delay. On the other hand, for the elder man, 1 second delay is too fast. Changes happens too fast. So before to know for sure what is the right speed for your site or for your application, you need to think about your users, like who they are, what is the average age, do they have experience with internet or not, and only after this you can know this number, your number. So summarizing all this information, I want to show you a diagram I created. So this is like everything what we just discussed, but in one slide. So if you want to create the animation on your site, what you should do? First, you want to ask yourself, why do you want to add animation, right? To not create such disturbing sites. So if you want to respond on user action, okay, go for it, add animation with deceleration. If you want to show some transition of the state, go for it, use deceleration. If you want to draw attention in some way, go for it, use acceleration. For other cases, if you create just site and application, like more maybe serious, not some cartoon, right? Maybe you don't need to use animation. So then think about the duration, about the time. So if again your object or your distance is like middle for the screen, right, for the for your web, use about 300 milliseconds to make this animation happens. If it's something very small, use less. If it is a big, use bigger time. And then you may think about what effect to use. First, entry exit. If you need to show something or to hide something, choose from entry exit. Or if element is already on the screen and you just need to grab user attention, so user sees this element, use some attention seeker effect. And yes, of course, like think about your site. If it's fancy, use shaking, bouncing wherever you want. If this is some business site, some serious site, use more classic animation like fade in, fade out. Okay, so we are almost at the end. That was all like some like principles, right? We were discussing principles, and now you need to have some tool. And actually the tools, we have a lot of tools to create animation, but we will look at CSS and JavaScript, right? Because it's like more convenient for us, for web developers. And I want just to show you that everything what we discussed in CSS, you can use it only like with one rule. You will have transition rule, and here you will write property you want to change, duration, and timing function. So that is exactly what we discussed. Property, like you want to change height, you want to change opacity, or you want to change something else. Then you will write how much time it will take. Remember this 300 milliseconds as a starting point. And then you will write how exactly like the flow of this. Will it go linear, acceleration, or deceleration? And this is it, like to create the basic animation. This is completely enough for you. And now like everything, all these three values, you understand how exactly you will choose them. There is one more value, is the delay. It's just the delay, how much time you should wait before animation starts. For CSS, I want to show you that the one big mistake is that pull here in the property value all. It's like very common thing, even in all example. I think we have it also in our sites, is when you write like transition all properties for some time. And this is very heavy, this is very bad for performance, so never do it. But in general, CSS animation is very fast, and this is actually the pros of it, the performance. What is the cons on CSS animation is that there is like no callbacks, no events. You cannot say something like first do this, and after this will be done, then do next one. Like there is some instrument, but they are not really good enough. And I want to show you an example. I hope it will be understandable. One sec. You can see here we have two buttons, add and remove. And when I click add, you can see that new block appears, and you see it appears with animation, right? It changes opacity from 0 to 100 for how much time? Let's see, 300 milliseconds, right? So I'm adding, and you see some animation. But when I remove, it just removed, like there is no animation. And this is very common pattern, even on sites. If you start looking at it closer, you will see that very often something appears with animation but disappears without any animation. And let's try to understand why it happens. We have here transition. This is our rule, right, in CSS, the ones that we just discussed. And here is like a small JavaScript code. And what happens here? When we click on add button, right, this is the first line, we add element to the container, this one, right, and we set, after this, we set the class maximum to this element. So why so? It's because when we created the element, by default it has opacity 0, and when we set class max class has opacity 1. And this is where animation happens, because we change something, and this rule of the element, opacity in this case, it is changes from 1 to 0, and it will be changed by this rule. So it takes 300 milliseconds to do it with deceleration. On the other hand, when we remove the element, we just remove it, like you don't see this transition. Why? Because we cannot say like do some animation and then remove it. There is no event for it in CSS. What we can do, we can add here some timeout and say first like remove this class to again move the opacity 0, right? And after 300 milliseconds, remove the element. But that will be the hack, because if you change it like from 300 milliseconds to 500 milliseconds, you have to change it twice in CSS and in JavaScript. And in general, this is not the right flow. The right flow is do animation, remove some element, or do wherever you want. But it should be in one place, and it should have one flow without some hacks. I explored like some different JavaScript animation library, and in general you may see a lot of articles that say, oh, animation in JavaScript is very slow, but actually it's not JavaScript slow, animation in jQuery is slow, and this is true, but there is already like a lot of different libraries that works very fast, and one of it is velocity. If you ever tried jQuery animation, it like pretty much similar, but performance is much better. So I will show you how we can improve the previous example. What can be a bit strange is that all these rules from CSS, like what property we change, how much time it will take, it now will be in JavaScript. But I was thinking about it, and I think this is even better because now everything will be in one place. We can control it, because sometimes animation, like what exactly we should change, it comes from the JavaScript. Like this value is created on the fly, maybe by the user. So let's look how it works. Like I'm adding element, and you can see it is added with animation, right? And I remove, and it is removed also with animation. Because it's just JavaScript, like some programming language, right? We can just describe that when we click on the remove button, first we change the opacity to 0, right? And then, so we have the proper callback. Then we remove the element itself. What is the point of it is that if you want to add a bit of animation, just something very small, it's okay to use CSS, but very soon you will see this limitation. And that is why if you want to do the whole user interface with the animation, like as we watch it in the first video, no way you can do it in CSS. So most likely you can do it only with JavaScript, so better start it directly with JavaScript. I didn't want to go too much in details of it, so this is just a quick overview of the tools, but I hope that you've learned something new here, and now it will be not just an animation, but you can see much more of it. I think this is it. So I've added the list of resources, 2 pages here, and you can read them because this is like the most interesting thing I found in the internet that are related to animation. And if you find this topic interesting, you definitely will enjoy these articles also.
Thank you, Tanya.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Very impressive, Tanya. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your
Thanks,
time and for
Tanya.
your attention.
Thank you very much, Tanya. That was really very interesting and a lot of information. And I see that you did investigation, so just not some information from articles. So it's more of your experience.
Yeah, it's not very big experience, but I see it works. Sorry?
Have you created those YouTube videos for the presentation?
No. Like something I created, like this diagram and something else, but no, definitely not. Like I don't know how much time it took to find such example, because again, like if you want to create some cartoons, yes, there is really a lot of information about it, but if you want to find a very specific guide for the web, there is not so much information, unfortunately. So like the list of resources, like this is the best what I could find. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, team, and I think we can end here. If you have any questions, you can write to me later.